Hey guys, today we have an episode with Belinda. She's going to just share with us so much wisdom from years of experience with homeschooling and launching children into life, college, and career. So we're just going to jump right in and get started. Hey friend, are you a stay-at-home mom or a homeschooling mom, or a mom looking to create margin in your family income? Maybe you want to take more vacations. Maybe you just want to get out of debt. Maybe you want to take more field trips. Or maybe you just want to do something extra nice for yourself without the mom guilt. Whatever the reason and whatever memories you're looking to create, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Optimize to Scale podcast. I'm Jacqueline, your host, and I created this podcast just for you. As a virtual assistant, I was able to create impact on my family and my income while homeschooling my children, and I want to share with you tactical, tangible ways that you can do the same with the tech, the tools, and the talents you already have. Welcome to the Optimize to Scale podcast. Let's get started. Today, guys, we're going to be speaking to Belinda Bull. She is a proud wife and a mom of 3 and a homeschooling mom of almost 17 years. She and her husband have graduated 2 children who are now college graduates and adulting their way through the world. Her youngest is a high school senior this fall, the 2021 school year. And Belinda is also the founder and author behind A Blessed Heritage educational resource, a leader in multicultural history products for the homeschooling community. She's also an avid gardener, a foodie, and a lover of coffee. She brings passion and authenticity to whatever efforts she pursues. Thank you so much for being with us, Belinda.
Thank you for having me, Jacqueline.
It is a pleasure. So the audience doesn't know you yet, but I'd like you to share a little more about yourself.
Well, I am, let's see, not a native Texan. I'm a native of Georgia who has been here, however, at my age, far longer than I've been anyplace else. So the running joke about Texas is if you aren't a native, you got here as quickly as you could. So I had a category. And we have, as I said, homeschooled now for the purposes of what I'm here for today. Homeschooled going into year 17 now. Our older 2 children are 25 and 22. They live far away, so we check in with them almost daily just to be sure they're okay. And our youngest is a senior this year in high school, so we are at the end of the tunnel. As I say, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. So we are wrapping up this season, but really kind of prayerful and seeking how I can best help the community coming behind me. But I think one of the ways that I can help is doing what we're doing right now. It's just having conversations for those who are entering either for long-term homeschooling or those who are looking for an option in this pandemic season that we're in. Just understanding how to relate to your children and some things that you may not see just looking across the internet about the unwritten as well as the written rules and advice for homeschooling. That's about it. We've got a dog that you may hear crank up every now and then. I didn't realize I said she was upstairs, but she's actually sitting right here next to me. So let's hope that your voice is not too strange for her so that we can actually get through this.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. And so jumping right into, we'll speak first to the people who have not homeschooled, and because of the pandemic, their children are going to be home.
Yes.
And a lot of them are going to be working, and they're wondering, there's a range of just like, how do we manage our time so that we don't feel like we're online all day? And there's people who are asking things like, I've never been my kid's teacher, and how are they going to listen to me do your homework or do this or do that? Or the people who are just really honest and they say, I really think they're going to get on my nerves being around me that much, right?
Mm-hmm,
And so we're speaking to them. It almost seems like we need to speak to the relational part before we even dive into the tangible curriculums and all that good stuff.
Absolutely.
So just starting there, because you've had experience, you've launched a few, you still have one home, and you have a range all in between. So tell us, like, relationally, where can we begin and how can we begin to set those foundations if maybe we already have a high schooler and we need to establish something?
Yes, I think one of the areas that we have to be truthful about, and again, this is something that you don't see when you look on the Instagrams or the Facebooks or the blogs, because of course everyone wants to present the highlight reel. They show their best selves. But all of the things that you've talked about are very real when you are in a home. We see that even with this pandemic as it is going, as much as we laugh about being at home all day, even husbands and wives who are used to leaving the house and not being around one another all the time struggle to be home and together all day. But even when you are in a situation where you've been homeschooling a long time, I always tell parents who is just starting out is, one, it takes about a year when your child has been in a traditional school system to de-school and to be able to relate not only to being at home and schooling, but also to be able to relate to you, not only as parent, but also as the teacher. It takes about a year for your family to make that adjustment. You indeed are your child's first teacher. So the thought that you can't teach your child, I think, is something that we've been culturalized to as a form of sending our children out for somebody else to teach them. Where does that initial respect and the initial learning and the initial mastery come from? It comes from mom and dad. So you are well able to teach your child. And of course, now, especially in the homeschooling community, there's so much curriculum out there that can have you do anything from unschool, which is basically let your child lead you in what you're going to learn today, all the way to very scripted programs that tell you, say this, say that, say such and such. So I think that homeschooling your child is totally possible, but with the realization that, again, it does not just happen. Getting on each other's nerves is very real. Burnout is very real. So you have to somehow incorporate breaks. And homeschooling, because it is home, this is another thing I say often, homeschooling, the operative part is home. School is an offset of what happens while you are living your life in the home together. You're also learning, but it's not home school, it's home school. So you're in the home and you are using whatever it is that you are going to use to teach. Understand that you need to create that environment that flows with the ebb and tide of your life. If you have doctor's appointments, if you have to take care of Meemaw, if you have to do scouts every third weekend, whatever it is, because of the convenience and flexibility of homeschool, it does not have to disrupt the flow of normal life. If you work at night, there are a number of women who work nights or work afternoons or work days. There are dads who homeschool. This is not necessarily a mom thing, although in many cases, dad is the one who is leaving home while mom is home. But dad can teach as well. You may split it 50-50. There may be things that dad is better at than you as an educator, and dad will do that. In our home, my husband is the fun one. So he is our field trip coordinator. He does all I do is say, babe, we're going to do this, 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 and I want to go here, here, and here this year. Of course, now we're not going much of anywhere, right? But back in the day,
Right.
I would say, we want to do this, we want to go here. He manages all of that because he's our field trip coordinator and he loves to do things like that. So it's a chance for him to also be engaged and to operate in his strengths. I think if there's a message to communicate, it is even at the high school level, it is doable with a certain amount of grace and patience with your child or children and with yourself as you both are adjusting to these new roles.
Yeah, you mentioned something that made me think about life skills. You were saying that, you adjust to, like, if you have to help Mima or if you have doctor's appointments or whatever. And so could you speak to how you incorporated life skills I know a lot of people, like right now, or not right now, but it's kind of been a trend for a few years of people like hashtag adulting, or like there's
Right.
all these blogs and just different things that are like, did you know this is how you boil an egg? Like basic things that, a lot of us might be like, really, there are people who don't know how to do these things.
Mhm.
And I know with homeschooling, I feel like it creates an opportunity to organically teach your kids these things. But some people, if you're not used to that, you don't know how to incorporate learning how to do laundry or learning how to iron or boiling an egg or whatever. How did you make that fit into your day so that they were not just learning book knowledge, but they were getting life knowledge?
Yeah, we don't formally do any of that, nor am I a believer in getting paid for chores. I think that you have to learn how to manage as a team in the house. And what does team look like? Well, sometimes team looks like you need to get the laundry done, or sometimes team looks like you need to take out the trash. Now, there are designated chores for designated people, but now with two of those people gone, guess what? We have to designate a little differently, and it falls differently on the one child that is here. But I've never been one to separate the life education from the home education. It's a funny story when you were talking about cooking and about kids that don't know how to boil eggs. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently because in our home we have two of our children. One of our children is a very strict vegetarian. He's gone now. And then we have one that is here who likes vegetarian dishes until you put down that Louisiana crawfish, the etouffee, the gumbo. And she's all about that sausage, a little shrimp, a little crawfish.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, but because of their health choices and their eating choices, I was laughing with a friend because she said, "Can you believe the number of kids that don't know how to?" It was something. It was something along the lines of boil an egg. And I said to her, I said, I'll be very honest with you. I said, we've got 3 kids here, and probably 2 of them don't know how to boil an egg, not because they can't cook, but because their life choices focus them in a different area. Now they know what to do with some tofu. so, so I think what you have to do is just be sure to just incorporate those things into your daily life. And even if you are one who pays for chores and has the fancy, elaborate chore chart and that sort of thing, just be sure that your kids are learning even little things, how to put a button back on a shirt. Those can be as formalized as you want. I'll give a good example of here. One of the things we did for a couple of years was we actually had a discovery day with one child. She pretty much sets the pace for how we learn and how long we learn. And so she's my more active child. She likes to be out and about. And for a couple of years in there, when her schedule allowed, what we would do is we had school on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday was a break for her to do something as close to eclectic or unschooling as we were comfortable with, which is basically she set her day. And then we schooled on Thursday and Friday. So midweek, she got to pick what she wanted to do during that day. And she did some cooking of her own meals. She learned how to not make sushi, but do sushi bowls. A lot of days she's very into health and nutrition. So we start with going to a park, taking walks, taking nature walks. Some days we did field trips. Some days, a lot of it was YouTube. This is what I learned today. I looked at this documentary, that kind of thing. Those were all life lessons and skills incorporated into the homeschooling environment. And so her schedule does not now allow us to be able to do that. But for a couple of years, that is indeed what we did. So that's another way to think about it.
Yeah.
If you're going to formalize the life skills, how you might just incorporate it into a homeschooling agenda.
Yeah. Now, is the very health conscious thing something that you were and kind of, is it something that was big in your life and they just kind of, it became a part of theirs too, because that's how the culture was at home? Or is that due to maybe just their own personal interest? They just got into health because of sports or something like that. Is the health conscious aspect something they just found captivating and ran with it? Or is that how your home environment was, and so there was some influence?
They found that captivating, and that was their personal interest. All three of our kids dance. One of them now dances professionally, and if the Lord says the same, the youngest will probably go that bent too, with the health and nutrition, and specifically the focus in on eating disorders in the dance community. But they went that route. I was probably the last to come along, to be very honest with you. Southern girl. I grew up, if it wasn't fried, it was either smothered in butter or smothered in gravy. So, and eating seconds was a way of saying that you love the food. So as I grew older, of course, I realized the damage that had done. And so I've been in this constant battle and struggle and just navigating the waters to get to better health. But I will say, truthfully, a child shall lead them in this area, because it was not me who first got us on track. Probably my son, who at 8 years old decided that he would go vegetarian, probably was as instrumental in that as anybody. And his venture into vegetarianism, I think at first was that he just didn't like chicken nuggets and the things his older sister liked to eat. But once he understood, he started with just wanting to do bread and cheese. So of course that didn't last too long. But then he tried it again, and I told him, son, the operative word in vegetarianism is vegetables. So we've got to expand a bit in what you're going to eat. And
Yes.
Once he went back into, he tried it a second time with an understanding that, okay, this can't just be bread and cheese. This has to be vegetarianism. He has never looked back. And that's, doing a quick math here, that was 14 years ago, I guess. And then our younger daughter, experimented with vegetarianism for a while, and she goes back and forth. But at this point, our family's, I would say, plant-based. We still eat meat. We don't do pork. We probably eat meat about 3 to 4 times a week, but that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I figure that's pretty good for a week to only eat meat 3 times. I can truthfully say that is plant-based.
Yeah.
I was the last to come along because I didn't want to give up my turkey bacon. And,
Yeah.
and then I thought for a long time, well, I could be a pescatarian and still eat turkey bacon. But 2019, I gave up my turkey. I think that was 2019. I gave up my turkey bacon, so I only have it maybe once or twice a year at this point. And you get older, you get health challenges, you just come into a better understanding about what you need to do long term, so that you don't have to pay a doctor all of your money.
Right.
So that's kind of where we are now. And we built the garden. We've been gardening for a long time, but when we really got serious about it, probably was about 2017. So basically, the backyard and some piece of the front yard, a small piece, are really dedicated to growing our own food. That's been an education in itself, and it has been enlightening and encouraging, and just really keeping us motivated in the right direction, even when we might slip back. I might also quickly say my husband was instrumental in some of the earlier starts for me in terms of health. He's one of the few brothers that I have ever met that does not really care for chicken on the bone. So that's where we started. He didn't like certain things. He wasn't a big pork eater. So over the years, I kind of put some things down that I walked into the marriage with. But we really, as a family, kind of joined this whole plant-based thing within the last 3 years.
Yeah. One of the things, there's so much I'm pulling from that story, but one of the things that I wanted to really draw out of the story is a lot of parents tend to feel like, I'm not good at this, or I don't know that, and so I don't want to be the one to hold my kid back. But one thing I got out of your story is that you weren't necessarily a vegetarian, nor was that your field of expertise, but your children still found it, and they still loved it, and they ran with it. And so I think another thing that people need to basically realize is that whatever they're going to do or they have a bent for, they're going to do that. And if it was, if it's written in their story for them, they're going to do that. There's no amount of imperfection that a mother has that's going to hinder what's written for them to be or to become or whatever. It sounds like just that willingness to work together as a family. And it sounded like you also gave them space to develop their interests and to develop to just be curious and to try things and to report back to for accountability and things. But those are two things that really stood out to me that I thought were important to draw out, that you don't have to be all knowing in order to homeschool your children. They can still develop wonderfully into many things, even if you're not an expert at that thing.
I think that what we do as our children grow, more than anything, is facilitate learning. We create this environment. It's rich with books. It has the learning space. It is clean and uncluttered so that they stay, well, mostly uncluttered, but it's so that they can not be sick, not have to worry about germs, not good foods, good quality foods, so that they stay well. And then we are able to offer this set of experiences, this exposure, again, because we have such convenience and such flexibility, until we are not in any way scripted or limited to what the traditional school systems are going to do. If we get back to the eating habits, obviously, if they went to a traditional school, we could always pack a lunch, but they're not going to be able necessarily to microwave that thing like they could do, or whatever it is. They're going to be far more confined in what they eat and when they can eat it. Certainly, if we were doing school lunches, I know that there have been trends to make it more nutritional, but are they getting enough food? Are they getting the right foods? If they're vegetarians, are they able to get food such that they're not hungry in the afternoon? Because that's one of the things. In fact, our son was talking about this just the other day. A friend of his was struggling, and he's 6'3", and he was talking about a young lady who's about 6 feet tall, and she began to struggle with eating disorders in modeling. She was trying to, as thin as she was and as tall as she was, just trying to get enough food in her system, but still maintain that thinness that the magazines look for. And he said, I'm 6'3" and I'm a vegetarian, but I still have to eat enough food to be able to do what I need to do during the day. So could the schools offer that? Maybe, maybe not. Point is, getting back to your question, I went off on a bunny trail there, but the point is, we can offer this set of experiences and this exposure and this rich environment so that our children can, within a safe zone, develop and discover who and what they are. And it is a beautiful thing to watch as it unfolds and to look back on and see, as I'm having these kind of conversations, to talk about how it did unfold and how it changed you as a parent.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get into that journey as the homeschooling parent. I know for myself, it ended up really being, it's like you're teaching your children, but it's also redeeming your education in a lot of ways, because there are a lot of gaps in everyone's public school, private school. They're just going to be gaps. And so it's really cool to, as you're teaching your children, you're relearning things and then learning things for the first time, but also it exposes a lot of things in you that needed to be pruned, right? I know when I say you, I mean us.
Okay. You can say me. There's no harm there.
And so it definitely exposes things that need to be pruned. So what would you say has been the investment or the cost emotionally or just in relationally with homeschooling? Good, bad, and different. But what do you feel you've put in and gotten out, and how has it changed you?
As a parent, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
As a woman, a parent, a wife.
Absolutely.
A believer.
I believe that the biggest thing that it has done for me, and it's a good thing, it's just learning to trust outside of myself, to trust first off, to trust God, that this is what he had for them, that the things that he is doing in their lives would not potentially have happened in any other way. He had their footsteps. He had our footsteps. It's easy sometimes to think about, if I had it to do differently, would we homeschool? Would we do something? Would we have put our children back into, say, school at the high school level or something along that line, so that they might see the prom, they might see more sports, they might see whatever it is. And I look especially at the older two. Our youngest child's story is still being written in terms of where homeschooling will take her. But I look especially at the older two, and I think, God did something really special in our home. It's not that other people don't have what we have, but I do believe wholeheartedly that it would not have happened in another way. What that required then of me was to learn to release some control, and not try to always have it as I would have had it, because who knows how I would have screwed them up. Just as one example, I'm a chemical engineer by formal training, so you could not have told me that my 3 kids were not going to be all math and science whizzes. I would have had them going down that STEM track without any conviction to do anything else. Just, that's what we're going to do. And of course, a lot of people follow that, get into that mode of STEM, and STEAM, because there's money tied to it. There are all kinds of articles that talk about the lack of Black physicians, the lack of Black doctors, and how we need more of this. So it's very easy to go down that path. But somewhere in there, me as the chemical engineer, my husband as a communications, public relations person, we raised these 3 artsy-fartsy kids. I mean, how does that happen? And, so our oldest went into the fashion industry, and then our son is a classical ballet dancer. And like I said, if the Lord says the same, our daughter's sort of, not quite going to follow in our son's footsteps. Well, that requires that you step back from your vision for your children and really release them to be who God has created them to be, because it does not happen another way. Now, our caveat was, you have to do something that gets you off the family payroll, because we're not trying to take care of 5 folks for forever.
Yes.
So there is some guidance there in terms of what you can do, but then some boundaries. But at the same time, it's taken that release of control and that ability to say, if this is who God created you to be, he's going to do a work, and we're going to turn you over to him. And, especially at the high school level, we are taught, there's no place clearer than that is to that scripture that talks about our children are arrows. Our job is to point and shoot. Because you really are releasing them into something that is bigger than you. And that takes a lot of control, takes a lot of trust. So if assuming that you have laid that foundation well at home, it may not look a thing like what you thought it was going to look like. But our trust has to be that we've trained these children up in the way they were to go. And they may deviate from the path, but when they're older, they're not going to forget who they have been taught and who they have been brought up to be.
That's right. And you mentioned something you were talking about the different sports and things like that they were doing. How do you go about in your area creating, because I know on their high school transcripts, they need to have electives. And so how did you build their transcripts, or where do people do that? But 2, how do you determine what electives they should take, where you find them? Do you have any recommendations for that?
Sure. First off, we'll cover that piece, because that is simpler to talk about. HSLDA, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's one of the first places you should go if you are schooling your children for the first time, because you need to know what your state laws say. in terms of, one, if you're pulling your child out of school, and two, what you need to do while that child is homeschooled. Every state is not the same, and there are states that are stricter than others. So that is HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense Association.org, and see what your state requires. But I said that to say Homeschool Legal, HSLDA also has free transcripts, free samples of transcripts, and they are downloadable. You can simply cut and paste your child's name into that and develop that. There are, one of the trickiest pieces is calculating a GPA. There are websites that will help you calculate a GPA so that you can do that correctly. Then there are paid for services as well. One of the ones that comes to mind very quickly is the Home Scholar. I think she is either thehomescholar.com or homescholar.com, but her name is Lee Benz, B as in boy, I-N-Z as in zebra. And Lee's done a fantastic job over the years. She's no longer homeschooling. Her boys are grown and gone, but she has done a fantastic job of really helping high schoolers walk through that whole process of homeschooling to college. And she's got many articles out there. She's got books, but she also has transcript kits. You want to pay for something, she probably does consulting hours as well to help you in terms of just preparing your child for school. And even if your child is not college bound, you still need to have some of that in place. You still need to give your child the very best education you can, because if they go into the military, if they go right out and start working, whatever it is they do, they are not in any way going to be hindered or hampered by having a high quality education, well read, well written, very well able to express themselves. That is going to put them on top of any game, no matter where they go. So don't shirk their education because they have said, I don't want to go to college.
Right.
Not to mention that they may later decide they want to go to college. And you don't want to be the stumbling block that has not prepared them well because of the decision they made at 17 or 18. And now here they are in their 20s saying, this was harder than I thought. Well, yeah. Okay. Mom and dad have a say in that as well. So give your children the best education you can.
If you could give a few, I mean, there's a lot obviously that needs to be done, but if you could give a few high-level highlight points of some things that are really important to implement and consider when preparing your high schooler for college or just life after high school. Like, what are some things that parents need to really think about? Because I think it's more than just math, science, English, right? So what are some things that you would highly suggest that people?
Let's see, I got long-winded, as I sometimes do, talking about homeschooling. That tends to be a passion, but I was going to say, just quickly going back to part of your question, which was electives. Those are going to be a part of your preparation and also a part of your life preparation. So what is it that your child is passionate about, and where might you find opportunities? Obviously online, look at the community colleges that are around you. For us, by the high school years, all three of our kids were very strongly interested in dance. So, of course, that became not only electives, but it was their physical education. For those that had other interests, my youngest daughter, as an example, is very into photography. So we have tried to get her into classes and opportunities that help her grow. Then the other pieces of the preparation for college and for outside of college, be sure again that they have quality education. Talked about life skills some, and so you want to make sure that those pieces are in play. I think if your child is headed toward a college, this is a whole separate conversation, but obviously, if you can get those tours in, if you can, as a family, make those your vacations, and you can start that in middle school, really. if your child has interest in certain places. We would take our kids on college tours before they knew what college was, but it was just to paint a vision of excellence. And so we have pictures of them at 3, 4, 5 years old in front of different universities because we knew where we were trying to go at that age. And so, I think we're going to hit 3 for 3 in terms of them going to college. But I know that's not everybody's story, and that's okay.
But it's evidence that it's possible to homeschool and your children go to college.
It is certainly possible. So that was a big part of our preparation, just getting them around to see campuses. Of course, you can't do as much of that immediately, but collegeboard.com sometimes offers virtual tours of different colleges. They will sometimes have representatives come on to answer questions. Realize with the representative, they're there to represent. So they're not going to tell you the good, bad, and ugly of a school. But if you can somehow get into that tour, if you can somehow get to that person who's taking you around and say, well, hey, why did you decide to come here? There are all kinds of questions you can ask. I list some of those things in various blog posts, how to make the most of that college tour. Again, that's a whole separate conversation that could be it's a presentation on its own. But
yeah.
But, I would say the biggest pieces are a quality education. Make sure they have basic life skills and management of money and good stewardship of money. And you want to put the best product out there that you can, regardless of what they decide to do. It takes focus and it takes clarity, but it is not impossible at all.
Right. And I didn't ask you this in the beginning, but we'll kind of go back and then go forward. Why did you decide to homeschool to begin with?
Our story was a little different than many, because many people will tell you, oh, I just felt this tug from the Lord. I got this, call in the night. We didn't necessarily have that. We had more confirmation of 2 or 3 witnesses after we made the decision, and maybe it was our hard-headedness at the time. The Lord may have been speaking to us at night, and we rolled over and I had a crazy dream. But homeschooling, we were introduced to homeschooling when our oldest was a baby. We met a family who was homeschooling at the time, and it just seemed like it was different and something to do. But quite honestly, Jacqueline, my husband, I was working in corporate America, and my husband was working in corporate America, and we had all of these little middle class dreams of, that society teaches us these are the things we're supposed to have to be happy. And what we began to realize as the kids were getting older was that we really weren't spending a lot of time as a family. I traveled, he traveled, and we were not able to really see that life come to fruition as it looks like on television or in the movies, right? So the kids were in private school, and I was in a work environment that was just truly dysfunctional, and I had made the decision that I was going to leave. And as I began to look for other opportunities, what kept coming were part-time opportunities. I kept thinking, part-time, really? But as I began to think about it more and pursue it more, what I began to realize was that vision of homeschooling that had been planted. By this time, our daughter was a second grader. Our son was in a pre-K program. And I thought about it, and I said, okay, if I put this part-time together and this part-time opportunity together, and then we pull the kids out of this private school, so that's going to bring more money in the house, and then we could homeschool. And we talked about, my husband quickly agreed that was something that was very doable for us. So we put a lot of homework, all the research and legwork and homework, and of course this was 17 years ago, so it was a lot harder to put that together than it is now. But we were able to kind of quickly put together a plan. And as I said, it was confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses that we were on the right track. And then, of course, living here, we're outside of Houston. Houston has a very diverse homeschooling community. So that was a help. We did not have the struggle that many homeschoolers have when they look like us and they can't quite find that group. That's not to say that everybody who looks like you is on your same page, but that is a level of entry and a point of comfort sometimes, especially for your children, when they are looking to just in some way validate or confirm their experience. They're looking for that other face that is brown.
Yeah.
So being here, we had that. In fact, one of my mentors, I met our youngest daughter was 3 weeks old. So we started homeschooling with a very small baby, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I met her within 2 or 3 days of starting this whole journey. And she's just been a gem ever since, even though her youngest was the same age as our oldest. So she's not homeschooled in 7 or 8 years, but she's still very present in my life. And I appreciate that. Everybody does not have that type of experience, but that made it much easier for us to do and to be comfortable doing. So that's where we started.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. We're like that too. When I started, my oldest would have been she did kindergarten in a public school. And the one after that was in pre-K. And after that year, for just a series of different events, we were like, you know what, let's give this homeschooling thing a try, because we also priced all the private schools first. And we're like, oh,
right.
This is really expensive. And then we just tried it out and ran with it. And you figure it out as you go along.
Yes.
I think that's something that people need to hear, that you'll hear the experiences of people who have done it for 17 years, 10 years, 5 years, even 3 years. And you think that you need to start off where they are now with all this information. And reality is, it's like, make the decision, make sure you're legal, of course, but just get started with setting the expectations, setting the boundaries, reestablishing relationally, like, how is this going to work?
I think there's something to be said too for mentoring. As I mentioned, I had someone in my life who had children who were older. She already had high schoolers, I believe, when I was coming into it. So she had walked the path I was trying to walk for much longer than I had. I think that she was a veteran homeschooler who definitely could help me. I also think, to your point, there are people who one of my friends calls them near peers, and basically somebody who hasn't homeschooled much longer than you have. They're maybe just a year or two down the road, but they've done it a little bit longer than you have. So they're able to give you some advice that may be closer to home, and their experience with homeschooling may be nearer to yours. Because to your point, when you're looking at someone who's homeschooled for 17 years, it's easy for that brand new homeschooler to say, oh, I can't get my act together, and you just seem to have it going on, and you have all of this happening. And no, I don't. I have what 17 years of hard knocks has given me. But someone who has only homeschooled a couple of years, and as I say, that mom who may or may not have on deodorant before she got to park day, and her kids' shoes are on the wrong feet, but that may be closer to your experience right now. And that's okay, because guess what? That's not a phase in your life that I can necessarily speak to. I'm not the best person to tell you what elementary curriculum is out there that would work well for your child. But I can talk volumes about how to get your child into school and to college at this age, or how to just prepare them for life. So
it's kind of like, sorry.
Go ahead.
I get excited about it too. It's essentially starting with the end in mind. You are a picture of what's possible, even though everyone's story will not be identical to yours. It's a starting place of what's possible, and you build with where you are, with what you have, and the knowledge you have, and you build. And everyone's going to have their own school of hard knocks that they're going to walk through, and they will come out on the other side.
Absolutely.
Refined. So
absolutely.
So if you had to like rapidly give somebody like, okay, as far as academic things, gathering your resources, and someone's like, I really don't know where to start for high school. What do we do for math? What do we do for English? what is some good history that has a good diverse like storyline of, different things? What would you be able to say, like, if you could just, your what you found helpful for you?
My elevator speech on that would be, first, figure out what homeschooling looks like for you before you buy any curriculum. Because if you run out and buy something, as an example, that requires that you spend 5 hours a day on that particular subject, I'm exaggerating, but you understand, and you only have 2 hours, or you've got 10 kids, it's not going to be a good match. Or as I said, if you've got to get Mima to dialysis every day or something, those are real situations. So one, figure out what homeschooling looks like for you so that it is a win-win. Then from there, groups, moms. Now you didn't have Facebook groups and you didn't have Instagram when I got started, but now you can Google homeschooling. You can Google Black homeschooling 365 is the hashtag on Black homeschooling 365, Brown homeschooling 365 are good hashtags on Instagram as an example. African American homeschool moms, all of those things, you can very quickly find people and find resources that can point you to a place once you have figured out what you might want to do, that then help you narrow down curriculum choices. And then know your child's learning style. That doesn't come overnight, but understand how your child likes to learn. Is your child a very visual learner? That helps you select curriculum. Does your child respond better when they hear things? They're really not note takers. They're an auditory learner. That may help you. Is your child one who needs to keep his or her hands busy the whole time? Does that help them concentrate? Because there are children who focus in better if they are doodling or have something to do while you are helping them through their lessons. Not distracted, but just simply something for their hands to keep them busy, and something quiet such that they can still hear, but they need the movement. That also is a learning style, a kinesthetic learning style. And those types of things can help you narrow down what it is you would buy for your children. Of course, price point, homeschool, there are free curriculum like Hippocampus, there's Khan Academy. There are very expensive curriculum. So any amount of money you want to spend or don't want to spend is there. OutSchool is another one that is very present. That wasn't around several years ago. There are traditional curriculum companies that also have virtual components. Abeka, Bob Jones, also K-12, Kaplan, I believe is another one, Connections Academy. Which may be K-12, but so if you are just totally uncomfortable doing it, you could always spend the money and enroll them into something. Time for Learning is another one, and that's time with a for learning. Timeforlearning.com is another one that is totally virtual, and you can enroll your children, and some of them are Christian, some of them are secular. That's another point of decision in terms of what you want your kids to know. And so knowing yourself, learning your child and giving it time to learn your child, and then being able to use those two parameters plus the groups you're going to join, the people you're going to talk to, the connections you're going to make to narrow down some of your choices. And finally, I would say, Jacqueline, if you make the wrong choice, it's okay. It's okay. You can tweak a curriculum. You can to what you need it to be. You may decide, I'm going to chunk this. There's some things you might want to do. I call it what to do at misfit curriculum, because there's not bad curriculum. They're just fits that aren't good for your family. And you may want to buy something different or just tweak what you have. So don't feel as if you're a failure because you bought something that no longer appeals to you. You're not married to it.
Exactly. That was really, really good. And I wanted to, it's funny because you mentioned community a couple of times. One is with like the mentorship. You were saying like finding someone a little bit ahead, but then also peer homeschoolers that are in your same season. And then you also mentioned how in Houston, you have a community that is diverse. And then you mentioned online community. And I wanted to say that for anyone who wants maybe diversity in community, but it's just not possible. Like, because that was my situation. When I was homeschooling, no matter where we went within 30, 40-minute drive of us, we were the only family of color. And I just want to always say, like, that doesn't mean that you can't do it.
That's
right.
Mm-hmm.
What I did is I ended up leading a community. And even though I was the only one still, I was leading the community, and it created I think it opened people up to explore that there's more than just the norm. But the second thing is, I don't know if you remember, I found you online.
Yes.
And it didn't, bring kids along for my kids that look like them, but it gave me a sense of like, okay, I have a sister in Christ, but also someone who looks like me, who's further ahead than me, that I was able to glean encouragement from, that this isn't a thing that's for a certain kind of woman, it's also for me. And so if you don't have that community in person, you can create it online, and then you can be the person to start building that community as well with just what you have where you are. So I don't ever want people to hear like, maybe this isn't a thing for Black families, because I've heard people say that too. It's like, oh, it is a thing. It's just maybe you're the one that needs to let people see that it is a thing. And so I also just want to let people know that, again, God is so good and he's so gracious that even though that is, my children have always been the only children of color in our homeschooling communities, I'm thankful by God's grace that he brought along, family members and everything that speak into their life. And then there's the truth of scripture that reminds them who they are and whose they are. And that didn't, it's not like they didn't feel like they could thrive if they weren't people that look like them around them. And so no one, it's like, don't get discouraged. If it's not available for you, create it online or reel in your family members. Remember, like, have them affirm your kids and love on them. And I think that's also something you said that was people really should remember, is the power of traveling, just getting out there and seeing other things that also can be just as impactful as it being around them every day,
And I will add this: understand who is indeed your support group. And even within families, homeschooling, we are the largest, we as Black people are the largest, the fastest growing, not the largest, we are not the largest, but we are the fastest growing community within the homeschooling community right now for various reasons. So, but it's still, when you think about our grandparents who worked so hard with Brown versus the Board of Education, and James Meredith getting into the University of Mississippi, there's a generation out there who believed that just not necessarily integration. I think that was the result of what my reading, I understand, is that integration was the way that the problem of separate but equal was solved. Having said that, there is a generation who believed that public school education was the answer to our problems. So when you talk about pulling your children out of school, not everybody understands that, especially when you start talking to grandmom and Uncle Bubba and, that group that came out of public school and truly did believe that that's the way to go. And if somebody remembers that you didn't pass math, but you barely got out of math yourself, and how are you going to teach math? So I hate to say it, but again, if we're going to have real conversations, I think as much as you have supportive members in family, you also need to understand who might not be ready for your decision right now. And the biggest piece of that is to make sure that your children are in some way protected from the negative sides of people who cannot support them just yet. My husband and I both come from public school teachers in many cases. So we had various levels of support from, oh, that's fantastic, to that left-handed shade, as the young folks would say. But I tell you what, they could not knock our fruit. And when our oldest graduated, those same people who had this, that, and the other to say stood up, you would have thought it was their idea to homeschool. So stay the course, be obedient to what you have prayed about and what the Lord is saying yes to, and be discerning of roadblocks, but also understand when he's paving the way for you to walk in it, and you don't have to, but other people don't necessarily have to understand your decision. You know, Noah did not wait until he got a consensus before he started to build that ark. And he was happy he did it when it rained. So let's be understanding of our support system, and also willing to lovingly distance ourselves where we have to. Community, that also becomes the community. What is the vibe that you have that's going to impact your tribe? And you're starting something, just like you talked about, starting something can be as simple as, I'm going to the park. Anybody want to meet me there? You know, they already know what you look like. So when they get there, they know.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so you don't have to have it all together. Just, hey, I'm going to the park on Friday, putting it out there. Anybody want to join me? And there you go. You started a group.
I guess just like building your curriculum with what works for your family, you have to build that community around you with what you're trying to do to support what you want to do and help you move forward. I love it. I love it. I'm so glad that you came on the podcast to share wisdom and encouragement for everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you just a few, maybe like lighthearted questions a little bit about you, just so people can get to know you a little bit. Like, you know, you're that engineer and people are like, oh, she's so serious, but they need to know you're super fun too. So we'll start with the one that's a little bit kind of sort of serious. We'll ease in. So if there is one book that, I mean, there's lots of fantastic books, but if there's one book that you feel like everybody should read as it pertains to either homeschooling or life in general or motherhood or anything like that, what would that book be?
My homeschool Bible is Sally Clarkson's Educating the Wholehearted Child. Just absolutely love the dimensions of the child that she talked about reaching within how you develop your curriculum. Her 5 Ds, I won't give it away, go buy it. It's an excellent book. Okay,
that's a good one. And then what would you say, you mentioned you're a foodie. What is your favorite food?
There's not too many that I don't like. But I would say, ironically enough, talking about being a plant-based person, I could probably do shrimp, lunch, breakfast, and dinner every day, all day.
That's so funny. And would you rather cook it or go eat out and have it prepared for you?
Definitely cook it. Cook it.
That's neat. So was that a big part of your day then? You guys cooked a lot?
We do cook most of the time. Our eating out is more a function of our daughter had something going on in town, and we're going to be in the car for hours waiting on her. Of course, now she's old enough to drive, and we're starting to, that's a whole different level of prayer there. But, you know, you're starting to release her to go on her own. But generally, that our eating out is more functional than us enjoying going to eat out. We do a lot of our cooking at home, partly because we have the garden right here too.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, as we're wrapping up, can you let everybody know where they can find you?
The easiest place to find, I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook business page, which is a Blessed Heritage Educational Resources. I think it's just Facebook, and Blessed Heritage is the page. On Instagram, I am Bullard Belinda. Let's see where else. I have a blog. We've had a blog for many years now, blessedheritagechronicles.com. Those are the places where I'm most active. And you can email me from there and get in touch with me pretty quickly. If there are questions about homeschooling or just word of encouragement, we have a newsletter that goes out monthly as well, just to kind of give people a little more access to what happens in the house. And we do giveaways. And yeah, so we're pretty easy to reach at A Blessed Heritage, and look forward to hearing from you. And so
Awesome.
thankful for you, Jacqueline.
Oh, yes. Thankful for you. I'm so glad you could come. And I'll be sure to put all your links in the show notes and all the different books and curriculums that you reference and things like that. So thank you so much for being on, and I'm looking forward to talking to you more.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for spending a few moments with me today. I hope you were able to find something of value in today's episode. And if you want to help other people find this show, please leave a review and let them know what you thought. And before you go, I just want to say this journey is so much richer with like-minded people. So come on over and join our Facebook community. We're all looking forward to meeting you. You'll find the link in the show notes. That's it for now. Until next time, may you be overwhelmed by unexpected kindness shown to you today.